Good morning or good afternoon, I should say. We changed our usual time. My name is Stephen Hoffman. I'm your co-host of Compass Coffee Talk, here with my fellow co-host, Bill Capsalis. We have a very special guest today. I do want to let people know as they come into the room. We've had a little bit of a change in today's programming. I'll let you know as you come on in, but again, we're very thrilled to have veteran CPG and natural products leader, Jane Miller, join us for this afternoon's Compass Coffee Talk. Hey, Jane, thank you.
Hey, Steve. Bill,
where are you calling in from? I love your background. You look like you're in New Mexico or something, that architecture.
I'm actually in my house in North Boulder.
Ah, well, I love that Southwest touch you've got going on there.
Thank you.
All right, and I know we've got folks entering the room. I'm gonna start welcoming our folks. First, Compass Coffee Talk, you know, we started it about 1.5 years ago in the depth of the lockdown because we wanted to continue our outreach and share information with the industry. We're thrilled that as we start winding down the 2021 season, that Jane Miller will have joined us. As you may know, we promoted this episode to talk about the story of Lily's with the co-founder Cynthia Tice, and also Jane Miller, who served as CEO of the company, helped grow it to very significant national brand in our industry. We hope you will join us in putting out our love and our thoughts to Cynthia and her family, whose mother is now in hospice, and they're in vigil in terms of her mother passing on this week. So we just want to extend our thoughts to Cynthia, who, because of this, just really couldn't join us today. So Cynthia, we wish you and your family the very, very best. So we say that from the bottom of our hearts. Cynthia has been a leader in this industry. I met her when she was running a 1,000 square foot natural food store on Broad Street in Philadelphia in the 1980s. So there's a person that's been very dedicated to the natural products trade for longer than we have. Having said all that, again, we're really thrilled that Jane Miller is willing and has joined us. And she is a legacy and a leader in her own right. Jane will share her story, but has been with a number of major CPG brands, and then has brought her leadership skills to the natural products industry, serving as CEO of such national brands as Rudy's Organic Bakery, also Lily's, a chocolate company really that took the category by storm in the last several years. First, I want to thank the people and companies who make Compass Coffee Talk happen. That's Presence Marketing, one of the leading brokers out there in the industry. We're thrilled to be associated with Presence. Thank you very much. Naturally Boulder, my colleague Bill Capsalis is the executive director of Naturally Boulder, but even before then, they signed on as a sponsor of our show. And also Naturally San Diego. Yay, guys in Southern California, thank you for helping us. And also a brand, Genius Food. Jane, you may have interest. It's actually a probiotic, gluten-free bread company out of the UK that's launching in the United States as a national brand. So look for Genius Gut Lovin' Breads in leading natural food stores around town. With that, I'm going to let my colleague Bill Capsalis take over, and we'll get into our conversation with Jane Miller. Thank you all for joining us today. Don't hesitate to get involved in the chat room, ask some questions of our guest. We will get to them through our show.
Great, thanks, Stephen. Welcome, Jane. And, you know, just good place to start. Like, it's been almost 2 years in this pandemic. How's it been for you? Are you okay personally? And how have you been riding it out?
Oh, thanks for asking that. It's such a good place to start. No, it's been, it's been fine for me. I think I've been really, really blessed just to to have a really good group of friends, and we felt like we did all the proper protocol during COVID and was able to stay healthy. And then with Lily's as a company, it was amazing that we were able to go remote, yeah, as everybody did very quickly, and continue to run a successful business. So, I feel really blessed to have gotten through the pandemic to this point, healthy, and kind of have learned a ton, as I think everybody has, about just a little bit more time to reflect about what's important and who you want to spend time with. And so thanks for asking.
Sure. So like I joked earlier, you're like the omni-channel person, you got so much stuff that you're good at and that you're capable of doing. And like Steve mentioned, your authorship, it would be really fun to just touch a little bit on some of your career highlights. Like what have been your most interesting jobs, and then talk a little bit about your book, which Steve mentioned earlier, in our
Has a bit of a provocative title, really.
It is, sleeping your way to the. So, you're somewhat of a role model for young women in the industry, and we'll touch on that in a little bit as well. But yeah, the book is cool, and then your career pathing is just so interesting. I don't know, give us a few minutes on sort of that pathing and that trajectory, and then maybe like, oh, here I am at Lily's now, which would be fun.
Yeah, well, I think when you have about almost 40 years in the industry, you can have a lot of stuff, which
Absolutely.
I think on all my bios, I keep saying 30 years in the industry because it kind of frightens me that it could be even more.
Now we want to look younger.
No,
I know.
Yeah.
I know. So my career started with big CPG. I spent the first 25 years at companies like PepsiCo and Heinz and Hostess. My kind of claims to fame there are, if you like chili cheese Fritos, I was part of the team that brought chili cheese Fritos to the world. So yes, that's exciting. I was part of the team that got Hostess out of bankruptcy. So anyone on this call that would admit to having a Twinkie or a Ding Dong, you're welcome. So big company stuff. And then I had the opportunity about 13 years ago to join Rudy's Bakery in Boulder. And it was really life-changing for me. That first 25 years, unlike someone like Steve, who's been in the industry, his whole career, I was selling Doritos and Heinz beans and, just whatever was sort of, coming my way. And when I had the opportunity to join Rudy's as the CEO, it really kind of changed my perspective on the food system and the importance of organic products and really trying to make a difference in the world of food. And I was really fortunate to have an amazing team that was by my side on Rudy's. And then we sold to Hain Celestial about 7.5 years ago. Then I had the opportunity to do 2 early stage startups, Hannah-Max Cookie Chips and Proyo frozen yogurt. So I kind of had the gamut, from big companies to, Rudy's was a company of size and it was substantial, and then kind of 2 early stage. And then I was really fortunate enough about 4 years ago to meet Cynthia Tice, who had just was in the process of doing due diligence with VMG out of San Francisco. And they jointly asked me to become the CEO in April 2018. And then as the story goes, we had about a little over a 3-year run, and then just sold to Hershey's a few months ago. So yeah, it's kind of the gamut from really big companies to success and not success. So in anybody's career, you can have all of that and more. And just to touch on my book very briefly, the genesis behind that was just having a lot of experience and realizing that regardless of where your career takes you, you're still going to run into the same issues: lack of confidence, bad bosses, difficult situations. And I wanted to put it all into one place so the next generation of leaders could really have it as a reference book. And as Steve mentioned, it's a funny book. I think I take a lot of ownership in all the silly mistakes that I made in my career. I think most business books are about how great the person is that wrote it. And I kind of took the opposite, which is I think I've made about every mistake you can make, and I've still managed to kind of do okay. So, sort of embrace your failures a little bit.
Yeah. It's so interesting to hear, a lot of that was going on, like in your career path, it was sort of linear, right? Like job, then next job, then next job. The book was something completely different though, right? Like that you challenged yourself to write a book. How long did it take you to write the book? And what was that like?
Yeah, it took about 2 years
Okay.
because I went from being really prolific, like, oh, I've got all these great stories, I can't wait to share them, to
Uh-huh.
I cannot stand to hear myself talk. And if I can't stand to hear myself talk, nobody else is going to want to. And so, yeah, it took about 2 years. And then I was really fortunate that some of you may know of a VC firm in Boulder called the Foundry Group. And Brad Feld and Seth Levine took me under their wing, and they were starting a publishing house. And I was their second book. The first book that was published not in digital form. We had both a hardback and a paperback and an audio book. So I think Steve might have sent the link. I would recommend getting the book itself and reading it. Even if you love my voice and you want to listen to me for 5.5 hours, you can do that. But I think the book actually in retrospect is better as a workbook than it is as a listening book. So
Okay. Okay. And I know that it is a book for everyone, but a lot of women like the book. Is there anything in particular about that you can speak to? I know that you talk a lot about your career trajectory and mistakes and things that you've done. Why do you think it appeals to young women in this industry? I'm just curious.
well, Bill, it's great how you started that. It actually, even though the title makes it sound like it's a woman-focused book, there's really only one chapter where I kind of describe waking up with someone that you shouldn't be in bed with. But it wasn't my personal story. I'd just like to say for the record.
Buy the book for that chapter.
But I think why it resonates with people is that most of us are kind of trained to not talk about our vulnerabilities, and that we did make mistakes. And when you hear about career tracks, almost like you said, everyone wants it to look like that, but it doesn't look like that. You go up and you go down, and you have successes and you have failures. And just because I'm on the heels of a success with Lily's, so it maybe makes me more interesting because people think I'm successful. But we could go back to other things where I was on the heels of something not so successful when maybe nobody wanted to talk to me. so I think that that's the thing about the book that really resonates, is that we're all human, and failure, I think, makes us even better at the next thing that we do, if we really kind of are self-aware and take stock of that.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about what you're up to today, and I think there's a common thread in when we talk about that, what we're going to learn about that. So curious, like the journey from sort of working for others and then being in the CEO role with a founder. What's it like? What kind of lessons can you take away from that? I know there are probably people on this call who have thought about that from a career trajectory standpoint, or have maybe even done it. It is a unique situation to find yourself in, and I'm just curious if you can talk a little bit about that. I know less interested in Lily's outcome and more in how it started for you. Like, how did you meet Cynthia, and what? I know you said VMG was responsible for kind of connecting you up, but you had to forge a relationship, and just curious how that went.
Yeah, it's such a great question. And, so I've been in private equity backed companies for about 13 years now. And with Rudy's as a starting point, Sheldon Romer, who many people on this call may know, who's one of the most fabulous leaders and teachers that I've ever met, he was not involved with the company when I came into Rudy's. And so I didn't have a chance to work with the founder. And then with my next two companies, Nathan Carey, who was amazing at ProYo, and Joanne, who is terrific at Cookie Chips, and learned a lot from that. But my real experience for any length of time was working with Cynthia. And I wish she was here today, because we've reflected on this so much. And if anyone here is an operator or a founder or trying to figure out how you match up, I would say that if you characterized our 3+ years of working together, the first year and a half were really hard. And I think it was, let me dial to the end, which is now we're great friends, and really actually enjoy spending time together, and have really reflected on what we could have done better. And so, but I think where it was there was really, that we weren't communicating about our expectations on both sides. And so, she'd been doing been, Steve met her, in the 80s, but she'd had Lily's since 2011, and went national with Whole Foods in 2012. So when I came on in 2018, she'd already been doing this for 6 years and she'd had a lot of success and she was in charge of everything. And so all of a sudden I come in and I'm like, Jane Miller's here and I've got the A team and we're going to take this to glory, and poor Cynthia's like, yeah, like, what am I, like chopped liver here? Like, what's going on? I mean, I like got it to the place that you got to take it to the next place. And I think the two of us early on didn't do a good enough job about talking about how we could work together better. I was on a mission to scale the business. And, I feel like I was respectful, but didn't tap into her strengths and innovation, and really could have had her be more of a partner initially. And I think we kind of figured that out over time. So for anyone who's on the call that wants to create a great business relationship, be super honest up front, because she wanted to be involved in the day-to-day. And I didn't know that. I figured, oh my gosh, you have me here. So like, go, do something fun. Like, don't do this, this really hard work.
Yeah.
And she was like, well, this is all I know is like doing this really hard. And so I think if we would have better lined up front, it would have been a better experience early on. But like I said, that it does have a very happy ending for the two of us as friends. But we definitely would both, if she was here now, she would say the same thing, that there's some things she could have done better. And there's definitely things that I.
And you did get on a better track halfway in,
we did.
Again, before, and, to draw the attention of Hershey's, the product itself really presented itself well. So, I mean, there's a credit to that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think it was really, it's like any relationship. I mean, whether it is the founder and operator or husband and wife or partner, whatever, it's all about communication and expectations. And I think that is what we learned over the course of our time together.
And I think you said a really neat thing too about, recognizing each other's strengths, right? So, I'm sure Cynthia's good at a lot of things, and so are you. So all of a sudden there were two powerhouse women in this brand, right? And you had to somehow figure out how to divide and conquer that work. And it sounds like you found a path. And was the pressure to grow, sort of expand and grow the business coming from the private equity side of the equation? Like, they put you in there for a reason. I got to go do this. This is what I'm doing. Did that pressure come from the outside, and then eventually you were able to sort of temper it with Cynthia and figure out how to do it together? How did that work in terms of like the growth strategy?
Well, if anyone on the call has worked with VMG, I would just tell you they're absolutely amazing partners. And so the pressure wasn't like, get out there and really grow this business. It was more, I would say, with myself and my senior team. From the day one, I had three, great team members, Phil Mason, who was in charge of operations, Lana Borden, who was in charge of finance and administrative, and Seth Manette, who was in charge of sales. And I think the four of us early on were kind of like, oh my gosh, we have a tiger by the tail here, and we are kind of first to market, and there's so much momentum. We just have to capitalize on this. So I think the pressure was really more on us than anybody else. It was kind of like, again, we had enough experience between all of us to say, this is a unicorn situation that we're in. And I think that would probably be the first thing I'd say to your audience is like, if you got a unicorn, like, take advantage of it as soon as you can, because
grab that unicorn tiger by the tail and mix your metaphors. And hey, you bring up a question for me, is that if there are founders listening, and again, we record this for posterity, so it does live on our YouTube page at Compass Natural. There is a time then when a founder will want to bring in an outside investor, and oftentimes with that may come outside leadership. Your experience and any counsel in that regard, because it's happened now for you twice, and it's been a good experience for you in terms of with Rudy's and also with Lily's in terms of leading that. But there is for the founder, what should the founder be considering entering into these opportunities and changes at the same time?
That's such a great question, Steve. And so much of it goes to being really self-aware about what your strengths are. And I think if Cynthia was here, she would this is how I think she would answer the question, is that the business was growing so fast and she was an amazing entrepreneur, but she'd never had a team before. And literally when I stepped in, she had her 2 kids who were in their 20s and an operations person. And this business was a large business and very well run. And I think she actually got a lot of guidance from Presence, who was, the key broker that she had hired,
Mhm.
Bill Wyland in particular, to sort of say, you know what, this thing is a tiger by its tail. And I think, you really could use some additional help to build a team. And so I think for Cynthia, I think she actually in some ways could have stepped into the CEO role. I don't think she could have built a team quite so fast. And I think that was really the thing that differentiated us, was having, the 3 people I mentioned, and then our ability, by the time we exited, we have 50 amazing employees.
Wow.
And I don't think that she could have moved that fast because she didn't have the network. And I think that was kind of what we brought, was this ability to bring a network. So for the founders that are on, just really be self-aware of your, of your strengths and, what you're really good at. And don't feel the pressure to bring somebody on. But I think if you kind of step back and say, where do you add the most value, and does it make sense to bring an investor in that can then sort of scale a team? Then, but every circumstance is so different.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to jump.
Jane, we're going to just do one more minute on Lily's, and then we're going to talk about what you're up to today, which is so cool. But a question came into the chat, and it's about culture, corporate culture related to large CPG acquiring a brand like Lily's. Was there anything specific in the acquisition that allowed the culture and values of Lily's to go forward, or can you speak to that at all? Just if you can't, that's fine.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's, one of the key things we talked about in the management presentation was, literally there were 3 things that we attributed our success to. The first was a macro trend of people trying to cut back on sugar. The second was an amazing product line, because if nobody wants to cut back on sugar by choice, but they know that they should. And then when you make that decision, you're going to do it, you only want to do something that's going to taste good. And up until this point, there hadn't been good tasting low sugar products. So Cynthia really had created something amazing there. But what I really talked about probably the most in some ways was what I've always called our dream team, and the team that was able to bring Lily's to life. And so much of that was about the culture and the values that we had as an organization, and what was really was important to us. And I won't take the time to go through the values today, but they were very important. And I think that was actually interesting to Hershey's. And if you don't know the Hershey's business, they're amazing people, actually, and with very high values. And they're one of the best places to work in the US. Michelle Buck is seen as a really great leader, and they are really, a very upstanding company with really great values. So I think when they looked at Lily's, they kind of saw that we were going to be, just consistent with how they would want to run their business. Now, what I will say to everybody who's on the phone going, really? What I'd say is, 50 people and managing a culture is really different than 18,000 people and managing a culture. So I wanted to be really, really fair and honest on that. So, I know everybody's name and their spouse's name and their kid's name, and probably most of their dogs' names too. So you just don't get that with a big company.
Right.
And in your case, they're horses' names. So,
and their horses' names, yeah.
Hey, Bill, as we have time, it's getting short. I want to make sure we get to, what Jane is focusing on.
Absolutely. We're going to do that right now, Steve. And so I have personal experience with this new project, and it is, to me, the consistent thread of Jane, which is to say she takes on things before something ends, and then it keeps going in a different direction. And here she is now running something called Haven. Jane, tell us what Haven is.
Yeah, I don't know, Bill, if you could put in the chat so you don't end up on the LA rehab site. So thehaven.com is TH.
How do you spell it?
It's THEHAEVN, thehaven.com.
Thehaven.com.
So otherwise, you will end up looking like you're searching for
Yeah.
rehab.
I'll
You're
post
gonna
it
want that
there.
to be in your browser. Yeah, just quickly, Haven is all about solving the chicken and egg problem. You can't get a job without experience, and you can't get experience without a job. And so we are working with college-age students to really provide them opportunities to help build their soft skills, and to layer on top of that a cohort or a community. And as Bill said, Naturally Boulder was one of our first internships. We had 2 interns at Naturally Boulder, and then we had another 6 with other Naturally Boulder companies. And it was an amazing experience. So we just had the culmination event on Sunday, and we're kicking off another pilot with Knox College, my alma mater in Illinois. So
Wow.
it's for anybody that's on the call, if you're interested, go to thehaven.com. There's ways you can get involved. You can support an intern, you can look for an intern, you can be a mentor, or you can just find out a little bit more. But it's my full-time gig now. And so I'm pretty excited. I have 2 amazing co-founders, and we're having the time of our lives.
Wow. So just tell us a little bit of how it works. You create a cohort, it lasts for a certain period of time. You're marrying bright young people with companies that need help. How does it all work?
Yeah, just very quickly, it kind of starts with what we call the Haven Experience, which is to do some upskilling on key things like leadership styles, social skills, how you bring your strengths to the company. That's sort of the starting point. And then we kind of have the students coming out of that we're ready to put into internships. And so there's a matching process. And what's kind of unique about this is probably many people on the call have had interns before, and you're like, oh gosh, it's so much work to have an intern, and they don't really do anything, and somebody needs to manage them. And what we do is we really focus on micro internships, which are very specific projects. And the benefit of that, and we had, one at Naturally Boulder, is that the student has something that when they get to the end of the internship, which is about 8 weeks, very specific to talk about, not just say I was an intern at Naturally Boulder. They could say exactly what they did. In this particular case, there was a big recruiting effort and following up with Naturally Boulder members for what they're interested in. But from the company standpoint, you have a real project that gets done. And so it isn't just somebody who's tagging along with you, Bill, it's somebody who's actually doing something that helps the business. So we kind of do the matching. And then we provide this cohort environment. So if you have one intern at your company, they're not like the lone person. They're maybe with another 8 or 10 people at different companies, so they can share experiences and really kind of have, sort of an alum group, I guess, is how to think about it.
Wow, it's super cool, man. And they did a great job for us, and they were happy with how organized we were. So I have to credit my team member, Christy, on that one. But they just dove right in, and hopefully they got good experience, and it's a pretty neat thing you're doing here. So how many actual students went through the first cohort? Was it 8, did you say? And then what will the next one be?
We have 8. We're going to have somewhere between 10 and 30 in the next cohort. So so we're sort of ramping up. I mean, my dream would be by 2025 that we've done 5,000 internships, and that we would have
there you go. There you go again, scaling things, Jane.
That's my job. And 50
creating the next leadership. Yeah, I love that you are. We usually ask a questions like, what legacy do you want to leave? But frankly, you're leaving a legacy of new generations of leadership.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really important. So I might ask you another question, maybe to kind of take us out with, and put on your crystal ball, if you would, a little bit. We've been through a rough year going into 2 years. What does 2022 look like as business and our economy tries to get out from under the rough and rocky road we've been traveling?
Oh gosh, I wish I did have a crystal ball on that. I think the way I'll answer that, Steve, is just that I think there's so much hope. I do feel like so many people really had to reflect in the last couple of years on the vulnerability we feel, whether it's in our personal lives or if you're running a business with supply chain issues and the things that feel like they're not in control in your life, and how do you have a little bit more control. And so I look at 2022 as being just being optimistic and feeling like we're going to be coming out the other side of this. Even if the virus continues and we're still going to need to do booster shots and deal with wearing with masks and stuff, that, we're so resilient as a people. And I think if we can kind of take the positive lessons that we've learned out of this and sort of bring that forward, I think, I'm just very, very hopeful about the future and what it looks like. And for the natural products industry, I think, a big aha has been your health and how well you are is going to help you get through something like a pandemic. And, and I think, if anything, it's going to be a resurgence of better eating and understanding how important the diet is and the products we put into our bodies. So kind of a long answer. And I would just say, I wish I had a crystal ball, but I'm just so optimistic and really looking forward to a fabulous 2022.
I think that's a wonderful response and a lot of insight into that. Perfect. Bill, you have any closing comments or questions for Jane or our audience?
I would say that 30 minutes flew by, Jane, and we could probably go on for a while, but we're not going to, because that's the way we are here. We keep it short and sweet. And I just want to thank you personally for showing up for us today. And again, our best out to Cynthia. And really, thanks very much for coming today. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Maybe we'll give Jane another quick word, outro, and then Steve, you can close us out.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for taking your time, because I know how valuable it is. And, if you want to reach out to me directly, I'm just Jane at janeknows.com. And I'm very involved with mentoring in the industry. And if I can help in any way, that's the thing I love more than anything. So I appreciate the opportunity, Steve and Bill, to talk to your audience today.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jane. And we were serious. We want to help you with that if we can help amplify a message. It's been an incredible 2021 season with Compass Coffee Talk. We're going to take December off so that we can be with our family and friends. We're very excited to come back in January, on January 12th, with Tom Newmark, a friend of mine who was very instrumental with New Chapter Vitamins and Supplements. And then also his daughter, Sarah Newmark, who worked at New Chapter, who worked in sustainability with Megafood, and has now launched her own regenerative dietary supplements company called True Grace. So we are very excited because we have a father-daughter team joining us on January 12th. Stay tuned for that and more exciting episodes of Compass Coffee Talk in 2022. We hope to see you guys at Natural Products Expo West in March. We hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving and holiday season. Thank you for tuning in. And don't hesitate to contact us anytime. I'm Steve at compassnatural.com. So give us a shout. Thank you, Jane, very much. Bill, thank you for all your co-hosting. It's a pleasure to work with you, my friend.
Thanks, Steve.
You folks out there, I just want to let you know our audience is just full of people that I admire and respect greatly. Thank you for joining us. We'll talk to you all soon. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye, Jane.
Yeah, thank you.